right, welcome back. It's a Built by Vitality podcast. I am Steve Pinkerton, sitting next to Mr. Amino Energy himself. We are not sponsored by Amino Energy, but he drinks about 17 a day.
Oh, we should. Philip Lewis.
Today, we're going to talk about what I learned from my experience with the Quigley.
Is that the guy off of the Family Guy? Yeah. The neighbor?
I don't talk about Officer Candidate School a lot, OCS, for the Marine Corps. I think it was a huge part of my life and a huge part of what shaped me into some of the success we've had down the road. But today we're going to get into a piece of it, which is the Quigley. And the Quigley is a water evolution, and I won't ruin that. I'm going to make people listen to the whole podcast, and at the end I'll talk about that specific evolution. But I think there's a lot of things that we can apply to our business life and personal life that you wouldn't think are run parallel to a water evolution like what I'm going to talk about, the Quigley. But I think there's some similarities we can talk about, and I would do anything. You know how frugal I am.
Yeah.
I would spend any amount of money to be able to take you and have you experience the Quigley.
You don't think I could make it?
During the same time of the year that I did.
I think I could do it.
I think you could too, but it would be very enjoyable. All right.
I have a different type of body fat than you.
Yes.
Totally different.
Okay, so OCS is Officer Candidate School. It's 2.5 months of basically getting broken down and slowly being put back together the way the Marine Corps wants you to be. And it's extremely important because many of us, including me, we went with baggage and we went with egos and we went with things that would have precluded us from being a competent Marine officer. They are extremely good at breaking people down. I mean, they are very, very effective. And, a lot of people showed up to OCS, and it's a competitive school to get into. The Marine Corps is one of the more competitive branches in the military. I guess I could say it. It's the most competitive branch in the military. Who are we kidding? But at the time, we were going through a period of, we were reducing some of our numbers in the Marine Corps, so it was extremely hard to get into, and you had to have some really good academic scores, which I did not have, and you had to be very physically fit, which at the time I thought I was, but I guess for the standards of the Marine Corps, I wasn't, as far as being able to run 3 miles and do a bunch of strict pull-ups and all that type of stuff. So it took me some time to become competitive. And then I ended up going. But a lot of people showed up there, and they had this mindset that they hadn't failed a lot up to that point in their life. They were successful in school. They were successful in sports. So you show up to OCS, and people think, oh, well, it'll be tough for some people, but it won't be tough for me. I look back, and I think those must be the most enjoyable candidates to break down as instructors, because they're the easiest to break down. Everybody's got holes, everybody. And the sergeant instructors there, their sole purpose in life is to find those holes and just expose people.
It's kind of like what you do to me here at the gym.
It's pretty much what I do. Yeah.
Appreciate it, OCS. Y'all did this to him.
Yeah. So we'll talk about some of the ways that people got broke. Some of the ways people broke down. Everybody breaks. Everybody gets broken down, and then they build you back up. And I think, don't quote me on it, but I want to say it's about a 35 to 40% drop rate. And the great thing about the Marine Corps officer program is it's one of the few programs that you can drop on request. All you have to do is say you don't want to go anymore. You don't want to do it anymore, and you walk away. I think that's genius, because who wants to have somebody that doesn't really want to be there? They made a mistake. They signed something. They got talked into it. They watched too many movies, and they showed up there, and they ended up getting stuck there because they couldn't leave. No, you can leave. You show up the first day and decide, what did I do? People left. And I'll tell you that I'll start with a short story. Now, I can't tell too many of these because we're on a time frame here. Philip cuts me off at about the 40-minute mark. I get the evil eye. But when we were getting ready to ship out, my PFT score, my physical fitness test score, was right on the borderline of being where it needed to be. And the 3-mile run, you need to be running a 21-minute or faster, which doesn't sound very fast, but 21-minute 3 miles.
Sounds really fast to me.
Okay, good. It sounded fast to me, too.
I ran 3 miles this weekend in like 32 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
So I was a little off.
You were a little off. And you had to do, you could max out at 20 strict pull-ups and 100 crunches. And to be honest, I don't know exactly where I was at. I know I got 100 crunches. I think I was 17 or 18 pull-ups. And my run time, what they told me was, low 21s, 21:12, 21:15, something like that.
So you're right there.
I was right there. Well, the officer selection guy, he filled everything out. I got selected. And a month later, I was leaving for OCS. And my OSO said, hey, make sure when you get there, you run hard. And what happened was in the month that I had taken my PFT until we left, the Marine Corps was finding that they were people that were putting certain scores down on their PFT submission sheets so they get selected, and then they'd show up to OCS and they wouldn't be able to run those scores. They wouldn't be able to perform to that ability. So now what they implemented for my class was if anybody did not meet or exceed their submission PFT, you're gone. Day one. You're out of here. You're going home. So he tells me that now I wasn't a low 21, I was 21 flat, and I had 20 pull-ups. Now I'm not saying he lied. I'm just saying I don't remember getting all 20 pull-ups.
Yeah.
I think I was a few short. And I'm pretty sure I was 21 and some change on the run. So right from the start, I'm already on edge because I'm like, we've been standing in line all, imagine the onboarding process at a government institution. I mean, it's a disaster. So you stand in line all day long, and then you get 30 seconds to throw on your PT gear that I have the same short size as you and the same shirt as you. So I look like a doggone idiot. I got, booty shorts on and a skin tight green t-shirt. And
it's crazy. Extra large didn't fit you that good.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
You think you'd get like 30 minutes to kind of warm up, get the blood flowing, hit a few sets. I'm telling you, we put on our shorts. I had time to tie my shoes, and the countdown from 10 started for the 3-mile run.
It's kind of like when we start these podcasts sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Philip, I'll be down there in 2 minutes. I'm like 10-4.
And I remember we had no idea. We'd never ran the course before. And so people are taking off. I mean, hot. And I'm just like, oh my, this is it. I'm going home. So anyway, my start to this whole process was pretty stressful.
Oh my gosh.
But I passed. I actually ran like a 20:58 or 20:57.
So you ran each mile in under 7 minutes. You maintained that.
When I left Officer Candidate School 10 weeks later, I ran a 19:28 3-mile at 226 pounds.
It's because you got long legs.
Yeah, long legs.
Long strides.
So that brings me into, let's talk about some of the challenges and some of the ways that they broke people down. Fitness was one. Some people showed up and they were right on the edge of their fitness. I might not have been able to run, but I was fit. The fitness part of it, I really enjoyed. I loved the training part of it. That provided no stress for me. It was not easy by any stretch, but I enjoyed it. It wasn't something that created a stress in during my time there. And you did different things. You were doing obstacle courses, you were doing endurance courses, you were running with boots and utes, you were doing all these different events, and it wasn't in a competitive environment to where I was trying to beat you, but it was as a group, you'd do everything together and you'd see the stragglers. And to me, it's not like I was hoping people would fail, but when people struggled, it kind of made me, it gave me more resolve.
Yeah.
Kind of like in here, when other people are visibly hurting, mm-hmm. and they're doing the same thing that I am, I'm hurting probably just as bad. But when I see it on other people and it projects, it gives me so much enjoyment. Yeah. Okay. I'm preaching to the choir here. So, for some it was fitness. They'd break you down and they'd wear you out. And once they found that chink, man, they would just dig at it and poke at it the entire time. For others, it was academics. Academics there, we spent a lot of time in a classroom. They taught at probably a 10th grade level. Very, very easy stuff complex topics, but they taught it in a way that was very easy to know. Here's what we're going to get tested on. Here's the questions you're going to have. Here's what you need to study. And you just had to study and memorize. But when you added it to everything else that was going on, a lot of people that didn't have good study habits, they struggled with that. And they failed this because, once you fail three academic portions of it, you're out. And you can imagine once you fail one, now you get more stressed out. You fail another one, and now you're like, your whole world's going to end. Oh, yeah. And that starts to spill over into the other things that maybe you didn't have a problem with. All of a sudden now you were spending so much time at night studying that you weren't sleeping, type of deal. Which brings me to the third point, sleep. It's incredible what you can manipulate with people's sleep. And I think about going back through that now, and I wouldn't make it 2 days because I need my sleep. I need it to be dark, cold. And there, you always had things to do. You always had things that you had to do at night. You had to, clean all your equipment. You had to get your gear ready for the next day. You had to clean your rifle out. You had to make sure your bed was made. So for 10 weeks, I slept on a bed that was completely ready to go. It was made. I slept on top of it with a little thin blanket and froze for 10 weeks, but it didn't matter because it saved me the time of having to stress in the morning.
You got more sleep.
Yep. And then they'd get you up at night. You do this thing called fire watch. It was the bane of my existence. And they did it alphabetically. So if you were really lucky, you'd either get the first fire watch, which is an hour of just roaming through the barracks, making sure there's no fire, which is, you're not looking for fire. You're up for an hour. You and your other guy. And then that would be the perfect time because then you didn't go to sleep first. Everybody else got ready hit the rack. You were walking around doing your thing. And then you had a full 5 hours of sleep after that. Or you
5 hours.
Oh man, it was.
Man, I need like 12 or 13.
Yeah, you do really well. We both would be in big trouble. Or if you were even luckier, you'd get the last shift, the 3:30 to 4:30.
So you wake up.
So you're waking everybody up, and which is fun. You have to mess with people a little bit.
You get the middle shift.
But it always seemed like P for Pinkerton always ended up at like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, or the worst is the hour after. So you get you hit the rack maybe at 10:30, lights out. You go 10:30 to 11:30, and you have the 11:30 to 12:30. Oh man, terrible. So a lot of people, they couldn't handle that. It really wore on them that they were never getting quality sleep. It was just broken sleep. So you look at fitness, academics, sleep, the constant failures. That is something I think that certainly helped me from then on, because learning how to deal with failing is something that not a lot of people do well. I look at it today and think about it. I talk to my 13-year-old about it all the time. There's a lot of girls at these volleyball tournaments that when they lose from all these different teams, you'll see them crying after the game. Yeah. I love the passion. I love it. But you can't do that. Not yet. There's a time and a place for your emotions to come out, and losing a 13-year-old club volleyball game, you can't do that. You've got to be able to handle those losses, learn from them, and move on. And what the Marine Corps taught us as candidates was, no matter how prepared you think you are, we can still make you fail. Mm-hmm. We can still put you in a situation to where your hopes are up, like, I think I got this one, and you fail. And it could be debilitating because you're like, man, I did everything right, but I missed whatever. And it could be something so stupid as a rifle inspection where we stood out in formation for hours, and the CO would walk through, the platoon commander would walk through and look at every individual rifle of the 150 people. And let's say he spends a minute and 10 seconds on every person.
Gosh.
Not that long, a minute 10, times it by 152 people.
Yeah.
And I'm, in the middle of the board with P for Pinkerton. And you've spent hours cleaning your rifle. I mean, it is spotless. There's not a drop of grease, nothing on it. And I can't tell you. And this has to do with if you fail, you lose. After 4 weeks, you get your Saturday night. You can go out and get off base for a night and come back Sunday afternoon. If you fail, you got to stay on base.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember the first. I think I failed the first 3 of them, and the first 2 were because of rust on my sling on the rifle. So they give us these slings from 1940.
It was probably used from the last couple classes too.
It's been used since legit the beginning of OCS.
Well, it's got rust on it.
And it's got rust on it, and you can't. I mean, unless you spray paint that thing, it ain't coming back. So that was the first one, and I remember, man, when you grab your rifle back there looking at it, he looked at it for 3 seconds.
And you clean it for an hour or 2 hours.
I cleaned it for probably 3 hours. And they give it, he said, fail, Pinkerton, boom, boom, boom. The scribe wrote his name down, revoked pass, whatever. And he goes to give it back to me. And man, I remember I snatched that thing so hard out of his, I was so mad. But he won. He knew right then.
Yeah.
He knew how to get me.
You.
And guess what?
He failed you the next time.
2 times because they knew they weren't going to get me with the fitness. They weren't going to get me with the sleep. They weren't going to get me with the academics. But they saw this chink, and it was one of them was, hey, I don't like losing, and I don't like failing. And so then you had uniform inspections. The Marine Corps has this amazing respect for our appearance, our personal appearance. Everything. If you look at your senior enlisted Marines, I mean, they are perfect. There's not one crease out of order with your
somebody
uniform.
drew them or something.
It's unbelievable, and it takes years to develop that type of attention to detail and pride in your appearance. I remember Gunny Scott, who's now Master Gunnery Sergeant Scott. He was the epitome of this. You would never find anything out of order. Before he put on his dress blues, he'd be in there and he'd be polishing his medals and make sure they're all perfect. There's not a fingerprint on them. And they teach us this in OCS, and they try to instill this. And I remember you'd have your uniform on and be perfect, and they'd find what they called an IP, an Irish pennant. And now I'm sure cancel culture is like, well, you can't call it an Irish pennant, but that's what it's called. Yeah. And it's a little string, just a little piece.
Oh my gosh!
And I actually wrote the definition down. It says an IP is defined by any loose thread, string, or strap on a uniform or equipment that detracts from a perfect appearance. Not from your appearance, from a perfect appearance. So you'll be looking and you'll study before you go out for your inspection. You got 3 guys looking at all the seams on your uniform. Are there any little pieces? And you got
if you
these
got
little.
one, well, you do just cut it off.
You
where
get
you
little
go.
scissors. You get little fingernail clippers. Everyone's got them, and you just cut them all. Off. Or you take a lighter and you make sure you can't burn anything. Nothing can be burned, but you just got to make sure that you can burn the ends of those eyepiece. So anyway, you'd fail for something so silly like that. You got your uniform creased up perfect. But anyway, your rack isn't made perfect, and that again, that is an arbitrary. It's you're going to look at it, and it can be the most perfect thing. If there's one little crease in it, boom, you fail. So again, you only pass the ones that they want you to pass, and you fail everything else. So again, that was a tough one. Then there's the weather. The weather. This is in Quantico, Virginia. So let me tell you, the beautiful part about the Marine Corps and the officer program is every single Marine officer goes through the same training at the same location, Quantico, Virginia. Doesn't matter if you're from California, Florida, Maine, Michigan. Doesn't matter. You're going to Quantico, Virginia. And there's 3 seasons you're going to go there. The summer has a 2 or 3 month block where they take college kids and send them. And there's a graduate course. There's the fall, which is like September, October.
That'd be good for that one.
Which is all graduates, I believe. college graduates, and there's January. Now, the summer has its challenges. It's the Northeast, it's Virginia, it's humid, it's hot. There's a couple things that are going on. The fall, those prima donnas, it's like summer camp. Okay, 65 Indian summer.
Yeah.
That'd be where you'd go.
I still wouldn't make that 3 mile run.
Then there's idiots like me that didn't even think about January, whatever. There's spots open in January. I'll go in January.
Okay. That's my New Year's resolution.
And it is cold.
Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
I'm telling you, but I'm from Michigan. So when I show up, I mean, it's cold, but up until that point in my life, I thought everybody dealt with 8 months of gray, cold weather that like Michigan had. I mean, Michigan is the worst in the winter. But you had people from California, Florida, Utah, places that they'd never seen snow before.
Oh, boy.
And we show up. It's January. It's the first week in January in Quantico. There's snow on the ground. It's 20 degrees. It's cold. And that was the easiest one. That was the low-hanging fruit that they immediately could tell within 30 minutes. And I bet you they made a list of them, of who got out of there with those wide eyes. They walked up that bus, and they were like, oh, my gosh. Because we all know it's a different type of – your body is acclimated differently if you're used to Florida weather. And all of a sudden you feel that cold. Like I remember going home from here. I've lived here for, I don't know, 14 years. And if it's 60 degrees, I'm wearing a sweatshirt and jeans and maybe even a beanie. I don't know, maybe if the wind's blowing. And you got my brothers and my family, they're wearing shorts and a T-shirt and sandals, and they're sitting by the pool.
I used to always make fun of those people at the beach. I go to the beach when I was younger with my family, and you could just tell the people that are from up north, because it'd be a cold day at the beach, and they're out there just swimming,
playing in the water, frolicking around,
building castles and stuff.
Crazy.
I'm like, they must be from up north.
We started a fire or what? We doing a bonfire?
Freezing.
I know, and that's what it was like. So I was lucky. I was fortunate. To me, it was cold. Don't get me wrong, but it's another Monday for me. I mean, I'm in northern Michigan, the armpit weather country of the
Could you
state of the
imagine
world.
you're from Florida and you're used to just hot weather all the time, running out in that. Then the first run you do up there in Virginia in the snow.
Yeah.
You know how like when you ain't running a while and you get that cold lung, the burning.
Think about this.
Oh, they'd be hurting.
Where do you think this is? To me, it was kind of obvious at the time, but where do you think the most candidates come from in the states? Where would you say? What state?
I don't know.
Texas.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, Texas is a breeding ground for military. I mean, they're built differently down there. They've got great values. They want to serve their country, but Texas ain't the Northeast.
No.
So there's a lot of them boys
different.
that they had to adjust quickly. And they gave us all this warm weather gear. So we're checking in January, and they given us gloves and beanies and these I don't even know what they're called, the turtleneck-like type things you put around.
Thermal.
Like, what do you call?
Thermals?
Whatever, I don't know.
Long johns?
Well, no, the thing you slide over your head, and it's like a mask, like kind of like the mask I wear, only it's like a warm fleece.
Oh, it's like a ski mask. You can see your eyes and stuff.
No,
and that's
it's just over your neck, like it just covers your
I don't
neck.
know that.
But I wouldn't know because we never got to wear it. We had this whole
They give it to you, but
slew
you
of
don't wear
stuff, and we could never wear them. So
It's just a mess with you.
that was even worse because you're like, I'm thinking, shoot, man, this is more stuff than I usually wear out skiing or whatever. This would be great. We could never wear it. And I mean, every time it rained, every time it snowed, every time there was any inclement weather, we'd stop whatever we were doing. We'd put on our silkies and our T-shirt and our Go Fasters, our tennis shoes, and we'd go out and do some type of PT in the snow or the rain or whatever. And it was just. It was watching some of these poor guys that their acclimatization period took about 2 weeks. In those first 2 weeks, I bet you could still talk to those guys today. And it's scarring.
Yeah.
So the cold was a really big motivator that broke a lot of people. And my point to all these are, academics might not be tough for you, but now when you're cold, wet, hungry, tired, all of a sudden academics isn't so easy.
Like when we tried to do math in your pool.
Oh, yeah.
In the cold plunge.
Yeah, exactly.
They got to me, Philip, 3 times 3. I
Like,
just don't
I don't know.
I got to get out my heart.
Exactly. Yep. I think my heart's beating too fast.
Yeah.
So that takes me through some of the challenges. And then you look at this. The other thing was with the weather, it was so brilliant. Like, I think back to who created some of the principles of the OCS training, because it's so brilliant. They put the chow hall about a mile away from the barracks. So when you woke up at 4:30 in the morning, you'd have 15 minutes to get ready, brush your teeth, whatever, and you'd march over the chow hall as a group at just before 5. Sun's not up yet. It's freezing cold, and you had to walk across. There's a kind of a 2-lane road that's kind of the main road in and out of OCS.
I might start intermittent fasting during that.
Yeah, well, yeah, you wish you could have. And then they put a bridge over top of that road. In that bridge, you'd walk up and over the bridge, and then you walk down, and wind would be howling. And you're still tired, you're freezing cold, you've got to do this, 3 times a day. You got breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You get 3 meals.
You have to walk about a mile there,
and
eat
a mile
back.
Yep.
And, each time.
I remember, you're looking at this, and you're 1 week in, and you're like, gosh, I got 9 more weeks. And everybody hated that bridge more than anything. It was brilliant, because if you would have put a road there, I'm sure there's some people that would have thrown themselves in front of a bus, it'd be better, at the time. But that bridge, man, you could just tell it was just eating at everybody. We didn't want to walk across that bridge one more damn time.
So cold.
It was cold.
Oh.
So we'll
people
get back
don't
to
realize
that.
when you go uptown to Charlotte, same thing. People dress a certain way. It's nice out. When you get in between those buildings in certain parts, it's 30, 40, it's way colder.
When the wind whips like
when
that.
It gets caught in the, yeah.
And the worst was when you started to sweat a little bit, and then you got heated up from working out or training, and then you'd be stuck out in the cold, or you'd walk to chow. It'd be freezing cold. And cold does something to people. We called it going internal. There'd be people that would just shut down when they'd get to the point where they just couldn't function. But it was brilliant. It was a brilliant strategy to break people down, because the tougher you thought you were with the cold, man, it crept into all of us. So that leads me into the Quigley. The Quigley was something that we had heard about. It's kind of I wouldn't say water confidence. It wasn't even that big of a deal, but to us in January it was, because it was so cold. In the summertime and even the fall, you had to worry about some snakes and some different stuff. Those were some different challenges mentally that probably would have been kind of crappy to deal with, but the cold was completely different. And I don't know how it got started, but I think one of the sergeant instructors made a comment that when the Quigley froze over, the command wasn't allowed to put us in it, because it was obviously frozen, and we just wouldn't be able to do that. And I remember the Quigley was going to happen. They didn't tell us exactly when it was going to happen. Sometime in week 7 or 8. And we were running, and we had been told that the following day we were going to do our Quigley course, our Quigley work. And I remember running through. They took us through. Our runs would be through the woods and all throughout this place, and we'd run past the Quigley all the time. And I remember I was at the back end of this formation run, and I heard cheers, like cheering, and I'm like, man, what in the world? Who's a dead man laughing up front there? It just kept getting louder and louder. And as we ran by, we saw the Quigley was frozen.
Oh, they're
Ice
excited.
on it. And everyone was excited. We were getting yelled at, but it didn't matter. Everyone was like, we
Thank God.
did it, And it wasn't going to, look, it was going to be cold for the rest of so we had just dodged a bullet. And we did this loop. I don't know how long it was. We used to run 5-6 miles like it was nothing. Like it would just be a normal day. I think about doing that now, and I wouldn't survive. But we did a second loop instead of going back to the barracks. And I was like, I wonder why we're going a second time by. And you could tell everyone was kind of happy. And then we got to that second loop, and we saw a formation of sergeant instructors running past us. and everybody got really quiet. And finally I saw what, and everyone kind of started, you heard some cursing and some stuff. And when they got to us, and I saw there was 6 of them, and they all had sledgehammers, and they're running back to the barracks. And we got up to the Quigley, and all the ice was broken into chunks and taken out of the Quigley, and it was open. And I remember our sergeant instructor, as we got close and no one said a word, said, "Oh, you ladies don't have anything to say anymore."
Oh, man.
So the next day, we wake up, and you got that feeling in the pit of your stomach, like, here we go. And what they did was they took you out to the Quigley. You were in utilities, so you had boots and your utility, long pants and long shirt, and your rifle. And they'd take you up on this platform, and you jump off the platform maybe 8 feet, not 6 feet, something not too high, and you'd be into the Quigley. And you're maybe an 8 foot, 10 foot in, and then once you get submerged, you kind of swim, and it opens up into like a creek bed, and it's probably waist deep water. And when you jumped in, you could see people like immediately. You got your rifle, you got things you got to take with you and do, and you just couldn't move. Your legs wouldn't move. Well, then they put you in a culvert, and they put you in this culvert. It's probably a 10 foot to 12 foot culvert, like a sewage pipe, and it looked pretty big, and people were just sliding right through. And what they did is they went feet first. You put your rifle on top, and it was just a confidence thing, like, can you control yourself and be put into this? And the stream was going to push you through. You just couldn't panic.
You had to relax.
And it was long enough to where you had 2 instructors, and one was kind of on one end, one was the other. They could push you and pull you if they needed to, but they weren't touching anybody. And again, I'm 6'5", 230 pounds. Someone your size would just slide right through. It was no big deal. And I remember getting up to the water, to the pipe, and I was genuinely concerned. Like I was starting to panic a little bit, because everybody else, there wasn't enough water displacement to where the water would go to the top of the pipe, so they always could have their kind of mouth above the water. I got in there, and I could barely get my shoulders into the sides of the culvert. I remember asking the sergeant instructor, said, "Sergeant instructor, I don't fit. This candidate doesn't fit in here." He said, "Everybody fits." I said, "But this candidate isn't going to fit." He said, "You'll fit." And he said some other things that I can't repeat, and questioned my manhood. And I said, "Okay, Roger." Put my feet in there, and my shoulders are sliding. The water comes up now over my head. It fills up the culvert, and I start to panic a little bit. I'm just like, okay,
you're underwater completely?
If I die, I die. You know, if I go, this is the way I'm going to go. And the current, it felt like I was moving like a half a mile per hour, but obviously it was much faster. But, you know, I just kind of shimmied my way through there. And I'll tell you, when I got out of that culvert, I was the happiest I've been in a long time, you know?
So you fit.
I fit. He was right. He was right. And then you had to get out and you had to run maybe 400 meters or 500 meters down this stream. But your legs, it was funny because you had this little bit of an adrenaline dump from that fear of the culvert, and your legs stopped working. So you'd see all these people trying to run through the creek, and you'd see them fall. And you're like, down. What an idiot. Like, why are they falling? And I'm falling, tripping over things. You can't lift your leg up over logs because everything starts to get cold. And in that experience, it was such a simple thing to this cold water. And we talked about it when we did the cold water plunges at the house. Cold water does something to you, and it's just it was such a eye-opening experience that it wasn't difficult. It wasn't meant to, nobody quit because of it. It was just an integral part of the process of finding what those people's holes were. And I think the more times that you can experience the Quigley type of moment in your life, then it makes those times easier the next time around. And it made so much sense looking back on it. And at the time I was just, man, I still remember staring at that culvert thinking to myself, why am I so big? I wish I wasn't so big. I wish I was shorter. I wish I was 150 pounds. that cold was just it was a different animal. So we'll close this by, I'm sure you're wondering, what was it that got me? Like, what was it? The failing. Yeah, that got to me, but not as much as something else. What do you think? What do you think my cracking point was? The thing that bugged me the most, the thing that they just continually picked at. And I'm being taller. Let me tell you something. Marching around a parade deck when everybody's 5'10" or 5'11" and you're 6'5", you are a target. I could be 400 yards away, and people from platoon instructors from other platoons are screaming at me because I'm so visible. Every mistake that I make, you just blend in.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Was it that short guy or the other short guy?
You look like, once you shave your head and you shave your face, you look like everybody else. Yeah. But when you're 6'5", I remember Gunnery Sergeant Jenks, he would get a box and he'd put a 24-inch box or 20-inch box in front of me, and he'd step on that box so he'd be taller than me, and he would just let me have it. And it was, I wish I could take down some of the things that he said because I'd love to use those on other people, but I just forgot them. So anyway, what do you think, if you had to guess, what do you think my biggest struggle was?
I don't know, man. I really don't know.
Food.
What do you mean? You said you got 3 a day.
We did. So I think, I'm not saying that I was this amazing officer candidate, but I think it was harder for them to find what was going to break me. It took them a little bit longer. Most people took 2 weeks, 2 weeks. I think it was probably the 3-week mark, 4-week mark before they realized it. And what they were doing, I would go to the chow hall, and I was so hungry. They had this amazing salad bar, and I wouldn't waste my time with like the hot bar food. I would go and I would build a monster salad. I'd put as much chicken. I mean, when I went through that line, I'd never be allowed at like a Ponderosa again because I just made a mess. But it didn't matter. I would take as much meat as I could, stuff it on this plate, guacamole, whatever I could fit on there, I'd put it on that plate, and then I'd just go to work, tear it up. Easily 3,000 calories, easily. But it'd take me, it takes a long time to eat salad. And I remember French dressing. That's what that is. I'd have 3 packs of French dressing, and I'd put it on there, whatever. Well, then when about 4-week mark, 3-week mark, they put me out on, when you get to the chow hall, you put all your rifles together, you lean them together, and you leave like a fire watch out there, rifle watch, whatever, out by your weapons and your gear. You drop all your gear and you go in. Well, you rotate those people out, and then they go eat, and those other people come out and they watch, and it's just a rotation. Somehow they left me out there. I was out there first, and you're supposed to get like 10 minutes, and you go in and eat. They forgot me, and they didn't rotate it out. Yeah, they didn't rotate it out, and then I had like 4 minutes to get in there, and I was flying through trying to get as much as I could. I got like a third of the way through my salad, and the guy grabs my stuff and throws it away, and I was ready to throw down. I was done. And at that point, they knew it. They had me. I was on every rifle watch. Every time we got to our gear watch, it was me. And when I would go through that salad line, there'd be 2 or 3 of them standing in front of me, behind me, yelling at me the whole time to hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. I'd go sit down. It didn't matter how much time I had. As soon as I was about halfway done with that food, they'd take it. And I'm telling you, man, it was incredible how much it bothered me. It bothered me. And I was starving.
Next time you're eating in the kitchen and here at the gym, I'm just going to slide up and take your plate.
And it's crazy because, again, they were so good at it. To do that 1 or 2 times and to know that, you know what, we're going to continue to do this until he figures it out, until he can figure out how to deal with this. It was weeks.
Is that why it bothers you? You thought I was eating breakfast a long time this morning? It's really just my drive to work. I live in Mount Holly. I said, Steve, I'm about to eat breakfast. I'll be on my way to work. And I get here and he's like, well, had that long breakfast. I was like, dang, so that's where all this comes from.
It's all so I don't
think the school was good for you.
Yeah. And you think about it, and everybody's at, for you, let's just say again, I'm not saying you're a small person, you're not small, but at your weight and your height, food was probably never going to be the whole for you. It was never going to be the issue. But for someone like me, not only was it an issue, it was to the point where when you're, again, cold, wet, tired, hungry type of deal.
Mine would have been the cold. I can deal with tired, hungry, that stuff. It'd have been cold.
But it exacerbates everything else.
It makes everything else worse.
Yep. So when you think you're okay with all these different things, you get put in a situation, and what they're looking for is they want that emotional reaction. And a lot of times, nobody got physical with these instructors, but they could sense it, and they were trying to get it. They were trying to let it happen, because as soon as you did that, you're gone.
Yeah.
It's one thing to even I guess I don't remember as much, but I would guess that even a verbal reaction to where maybe you said something,
you smart off back or something.
It's depending on what you said, you were going to be gone. And I can't tell you how close I was to saying something
when they take your food.
Yeah, and I think back, and I'm so glad, but it wasn't like I didn't crush OCS. There were a couple instances where I probably was a coin flip away from never being a Marine officer, and that's the beauty of it. And I think when you look at an entrepreneur or a business owner, if you don't identify, if I didn't have those things identified in me early, I would have had issues down the road, where now it didn't matter how much I relied on food, for example. It never messed with me like that. When we were deployed and we didn't eat hot food for months, and we had our own crappy food, I never even thought twice about it, because they broke your spirit of that. And as a business owner, you might have these issues that if you don't identify them and figure out how to fill the gap with those, you're going to get exposed. You can't hide them. And once that little chink in your armor gets exposed, it's going to be over and over and over again. And I think that when I look back to Officer Candidate School, I look at how lucky I was to be able to take advantage of that incredible training process, where nowadays on the civilian side you could never do that, because everyone they're just not built that way to be able to handle that. Their feelings would get hurt, and they'd have to go tell their mom and dad, and then mom and dad have to come talk to that. It just wouldn't work.
So I try to tell my niece all the time, like if somebody messes with her at school or does something to her, I'm like, hey, if you let them know that this bothers you, it's not going to stop. I was like, this is how it is. In school now is probably worse than when we were in school. But I tell her all the time, like, if that group or whoever knows that this stuff bothers you, they're going to pick at it forever.
Yep. If you give someone control over something, they're gonna use that control. And I wish more than anything, I had been back to OCS a couple different times when I was on the back end of my 8 years. I was an officer recruiter myself, and I got to go back and see some of it from the other side of the curtain. But I wish I could spend the whole 10 weeks and see and talk to the instructors and hear the conversations and hear the strategies that they use, because they're so well thought out and so well executed to be able to break people down. And I think that's what every business owner needs. They need to be broken down and figured out, okay, here's your strengths, here's your weaknesses, and you better figure out these weaknesses or you're not going to be successful.
Yeah.
So I don't talk a lot about the Marine Corps, but this was kind of a fun a fun podcast. And Quantico, they call it a crossroads of the Marine Corps. Every Marine usually at some point in their career finds himself at Quantico. And the officers, we all find ourselves at Quantico, but even the enlisted Marines who get trained at Parris Island or out west at Camp Pendleton, those guys will find their way to Quantico, and it's such an incredible Marine Corps base. And if you have a chance to go up there and visit, I would strongly recommend it. The Marine Corps Memorial, the Marine Corps Museum is incredible. Very, very, very incredible. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Maybe there'll be some follow-up stuff with this. There's certainly some funny stories that I can tell. I'm sure all of you will enjoy the challenges that I had at OCS, and I can tell you there were many, and some of them at the time weren't comical, but thinking back now, there were some that I wish Philip was there to see. So
Me too.
all right, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, this is the Built by Vitality podcast.